Hello and welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. My name is Justin Fried, and I am joined, as always, by my good friend, Mike Luciano. Mike, it is victory week. The Jets have won a football game, and we're going to talk about it. How you feeling, buddy?
Well, I'm feeling better than I did after the San Francisco game, that's for sure, because they got a win. A questionable win, a Ferric win to a degree because of what we're going to talk about in our first segment with old Jermaine Johnson, but a win nonetheless. These things are hard to come by in the NFL. We'll talk about where the Jets go from here on the defensive line and look back a little more at that Titans win, and also look forward to Thursday Night Football against the New England Patriots with a very special guest that we will bring on in about a half hour. But first, for all that, you can always find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there, and we're on YouTube at the Jet Press. You can like and subscribe. You can do all that there. It really does support the show. And before we get into it, Justin, we have a special message from our friends over at Underdog Fantasy, because it is the greatest time of year again. Football is back, and it's here to stay till February. Over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by making picks on Underdog. And as someone who's used this app quite a lot, I will say it is, for these kinds of things, it is very streamlined, very easy to use. I like it a lot. This is a good one to pick. So, making picks is pretty straightforward. I do like that. Just head over to the simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com and sign up with promo code PRESS. And Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code PRESS, P-R-E-S-S, to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 or older, 21 in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And in New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Justin.
Very nice.
Now that wonderful ad read is done, we can go to talk about the New York Jets, minus one player, because Jermaine Johnson, a guy that the Jets expected big things from, that we expected big things from after a fringe Pro Bowl year. I know he got the nod, but certainly an excellent year. Very good run defender, improved his pass rush by leaps and bounds. He is now done for the whole season after 2 games. The future is what it is. It's not looking good for him because he's an edge rusher on a rookie deal. Fifth year option, They were about to start thinking about that. Now that's in question. Do the Jets give him a long-term deal? That's in question. But before we get to all of that's for months down the line. We just got to look at the here and now, because the Jets probably from last year now have 3 of their 4 best defensive linemen from one of the best defensive lines in the league. Probably have 3 of their 4 gone. And then the big addition is also not here because Bryce Huff is in Philadelphia and he's struggled. I get it. He's been very bad, but he was good for the Jets last year. He's good in that system, not here anymore. John Franklin Myers, as we know, is in Denver. Hassan Reddick is God knows where he is. He could be in Tajikistan right now. We'd have no idea. And Jermaine Johnson out for the year. So where do you go from here? I think that the temptation is always, well, let's sign a free agent. Let's trade for a guy. And I get it. And Robert Saleh's scheme doesn't seem like one of these Brandon Staley, overly complex, trying to look nice. It looks like, to a degree, especially for defensive linemen, it's a lot of let's just line up and play football. Go and rush the passer. So I don't think that you need to necessarily worry about guys taking too long to learn the playbook. But even with that, just getting the vibes and how this team has operated over the last couple of years, it seems to me like this is going to be an internal replacement. So what does that mean? That means, Will McDonald, your time to shine. This is why they picked you 15th overall. I don't think they would have thought that this would have happened. All the things that led up to Will McDonald being now the top edge rusher on the team. But here he is. 3 sacks. And now, again, I know Justin, who can be, I think, a little stingy with compliments for McDonald, called the worst 3-sack game ever. But
I didn't say worst. I think I said like least or noticeable or something like
least
that.
noticeable.
Worst is not the same. I don't think it's the
3
worst.
sacks is still 3 sacks. And one of them was a big moment at the end. And he almost got 4 because on the last play, he almost got to Will Levis. So he's going to be big. And then for all this much ballyhooed defensive line depth, this much ballyhooed edge depth, we were talking about all preseason. Top McKinley, Braden McGregor, Eric Watts, all these guys. Because in the first couple games, McKinley and McGregor, you can barely notice them out there. And when they are out there, I don't think either of them has made a single play in 2 weeks. Now they're going to be not only important names, but core members of this defense that I still don't think is going to really change it up and blitz a lot. Like, that's where I think a guy like D'Amico Ryans differs from Robert Saleh. I was watching that Bears game. D'Amico was blitzing a lot. He'll blitz when he needs to. Robert Saleh doesn't. He says, this is the system. Good luck with it. So because of that, again, like we've said before, if you're a really good defensive lineman, it's great for you because you get so much trust and opportunity to rush the passer. When it's Todd McKinley and Braden McGregor and you're struggling, and Michael Clemens, who's going to play a lot too, and you're struggling, you'll be put on blast for the world to see because it's very obvious that you're not getting home.
Yeah, I don't think the Jets are going to go with an external option here. I think it's either going to be internal or they will figure out something with Hassan Reddick, which we'll talk about in a second. As far as internal options go, the Jets have been very praiseworthy of their defensive line throughout the summer. They've touted it as one of the deepest defensive lines in the NFL, and I think a lot of fans kind of bought into it. And I think a lot of fans were also agreeing with that and thinking that it was one of the best defensive lines or deepest defensive lines. And now we've seen through the first few weeks, maybe that's not the case. I like Will McDonald, Mike. I think that he has the potential to be a very good pass rusher in the system. I want to make it clear that I do think his performance last week, this past Sunday, was very encouraging, and it was a step in the right direction. I don't think it was nearly as dominant as the stat line would indicate. Those 3 sacks that he got, 3 sacks and forced fumble, one of them was a coverage sack where he was not rushing the passer. He was playing basically QB spy, and Will Levis stepped up right into Will McDonald. He wasn't even rushing the passer. The second sack was when Will Levis tripped over him and threw the ball backwards. That was a strip sack. They credited Will McDonald with a strip sack for that. And in the third one,
sack, I think many are calling it.
Whatever you want to call it, Will McDonald was on the floor because he got blocked out of the play, and Will Levis just happened to trip over him. The third sack was an incredible play that in many ways won the game for the Jets. And that's what the takeaway should be, that when I hate to use like the whole clutch argument because I think it's a little flawed, but Will McDonald had that mindset in that moment. I think he talked about it after the game. Like, if you win this one rep, you can win the game for your team. And that's what he did. And it was a great play. It was a great sack. But I don't think he was dominant throughout. I mean, again, we're not going to use PFF for everything here, but his PFF pass rush grade was like a 60. It was pretty average, which seems pretty straightforward. He wasn't really getting a ton of pressure outside of that 1 and 2 plays towards the end of the game. But he's going to have to step up big time. I mean, even if they bring back Hassan Reddick and even if they make another move, it's on Will McDonald. And this is the reason you drafted the guy 15th overall. They need him to take that step. As far as external options go, people throwing out Yannick Ngakoue, I'm not interested. I don't think anybody out there in the market is really an improvement over anything that they have in-house right now. And that's saying a lot because I don't think their in-house options are particularly great. Yannick Ngakoue last year had and again, we're not going to use PFF for everything, but he had a 39 PFF grade, 37.7 run defense grade, missed 29% of his tackle attempts, and had a 8% pressure rate, which is not good. He was not good. He was very bad. There's a reason that he's still out there. I know he had a couple of productive sack seasons the year before that, not a ton of pressures. The last time he was genuinely a good pass rusher was 2021, 2022, or 2020, 2021, I should say. The last couple of years, not so much. So I don't have interest there. And then the other options are Shaq Lawson, old friend, another old friend, Carl Lawson, an almost old friend, Anthony Barr. Like it's very, very, very limited.
Guys who won't move the needle, so it's almost like why even bother?
Yeah, not at all. And so I would just rather give guys like Eric Watts a chance to see what he's got. Or Braden McGregor, I know he's kind of been pretty nondescript for the first 2 weeks. I don't think you're going to get much more or any more production from a guy like Yannick Ngakoue at this stage. So as far as those go, that's your realistic options. I would like to float out another option before we talk about Hassan Reddick, which we'll get to in a moment. I would love to see the Jets call up the Denver Broncos and say, hey, you guys got John Franklin Myers for us in the offseason. How's he doing? How's our old friend doing? Why not trade back for John Franklin Myers and see if there's any interest there? Because we don't have to talk about the mistakes that Joe Douglas has made with the defensive line this offseason, because I've talked about it for months. And it seems now, I think a lot more people seem to agree with that after what we've seen from the D-line now. But one of the biggest mistakes, I know Reddick is not there, I'm well aware, but the John Franklin
and the like, who could have predicted that? And when you're on edge rusher number 5 already after 2 weeks, it was who has a great 5th edge rusher? It was
awful in week 1, and they were just down their one player. It was awful in week 1. It was worse in week 1 with Jermaine Johnson was terrible in week 1. Like it was worse then. They were healthy. They were fully healthy. Just didn't have Hassan Reddick, obviously. But I don't with the John Franklin Myers trade, there's no excusing that to me. It's just such an insane decision. And I've seen people float out that maybe it was a Woody Johnson call to save cash, because they literally could have saved more cap space by restructuring his deal the same way Denver did than they did by trading him. And John Franklin Myers has publicly stated that he was very open to restructuring his deal to stay with the Jets. The Jets never approached him with that. So I don't know what's going on there. So maybe that could be an obstacle, but I don't know the context behind it. But right now, John Franklin Myers is on one of the worst teams in the NFL. I know he's had a iffy start to the season, whatever. It's a bad team. We know he's good. We know he produces with the Jets. Why not call up the Broncos and say, hey, what's it going to take to bring him back? That would be my first option. I would want to do that before I extend Hassan Reddick. But I don't know what your thoughts on that, Mike, are. I don't know what are your thoughts on the Hassan Reddick situation too, because from what it seems, the Jets aren't making any decisions right now. But if Thursday's game, if tomorrow's game goes poorly, maybe they do. Maybe they do give in.
Well, on Franklin Myers, it would also be another tough look if you had to probably pay more to reacquire a guy in John Franklin Myers. Like, they're not going to give him back at the same price and go, okay, you messed up, here you go. So that's more assets after already dumping stuff into Reddick and getting nothing for him. That'd be tough. And again, Franklin Myers would help a lot. He'd probably be the best player you could get immediately outside of like a huge, like there's no Montez Sweat out there where you could trade like big assets for him and he'd be a huge immediate addition like the Bears did last year. That guy's not really out there.
Yeah.
So I get that, but I keep coming back to Reddick. And I'll make a bold prediction. I think this is kind of a reversal of kind of what I've thought previously with him, which is if he is not back, I'm going to even give him to, if he does not play after the Broncos game, if he's at least not here, trade him. Because this was the nightmare scenario for the Jets with Hassan Reddick, which is not only are the edges playing bad without him, but now Jermaine Johnson, who was your best non-Reddick edge, he's done for the year, and his future ability is going to be impacted. So you would think if Reddick probably went from 1% leverage to, I don't know, probably somewhere 50-50, honestly, because now they desperately need him. Like, they could still have a good defensive line, I think, this year without him. But if they want an elite defensive line like last year, the only way of having any shot of having that happen is paying Hassan Reddick. And if the Jets are really unwilling to budge, if they're saying, look, show up still, I don't care. If you don't show up, we're not paying you. And Reddick is willing to go, I'm willing to go into $10 million in lost money just because I want a deal that bad. If that doesn't break the seal, then nothing will. And then you could at least get something back. Maybe another defensive end and a 4th-round pick. Maybe something like that. Because this should be the perfect confluence of circumstances to get a deal done. And if it doesn't, then I really have my doubts about if the Jets honestly are even going to, in good faith, negotiate. Do they even want Hassan Reddick back, like for the long term now? Does Hassan Reddick even want to be with the Jets after they've essentially, and his own stupidity, but after their refusal to pay him has now cost him a bunch of money? Like nobody's happy right now. And I think at a certain point, Joe Douglas is just going to say, you know what? I would have loved to have him, but I can't keep doing this every single week. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I wouldn't blame him.
I'll make a prediction now, and not that my predictions with the Hassan Reddick situation have been great, but I'll make a prediction now and say that the Jets are more likely to trade Hassan Reddick than they are to extend him. I don't think they're going to extend Hassan Reddick. I don't think they should. I know a lot of people are, thinking that the Jermaine Johnson injury now gives Reddick significantly more leverage, and maybe on paper that might be true, but I don't think in actuality it is. I don't think in reality Joe Douglas is going to budge. And I know, again, he's fighting for his job right now. Like, the Jets need to win. They need to make the playoffs. They need to make a run for Joe Douglas to even have to worry about the future. But that would go against everything that he has ever believed in as a general manager. If he were to just cave right now because one of his players got hurt and then extend this on Reddick, because it's not as simple as just pay the man. Like, I keep seeing so many people be like, oh, just stop being cheap. Pay the man. Okay, if you pay Hassan Reddick, who are you not paying? Because if you extend Hassan Reddick and give him a 4-year, $25 to $27 million deal, per year, that's what he's looking for. Like, if you give him that contract, who are you not paying? Because that's going to prevent you from paying. I mean, Jermaine Johnson, maybe that's a discussion because of everything. And that's very unfortunate that we have to have the discussion, but they have to make a decision on his 5th-year option in the offseason. I don't know what they do. My gut says they probably pick it up because they did the same with Elijah Vera-Tucker, but he also plays a different position, a position that it's notoriously harder to come back from an Achilles injury, and a position that the Jets have proven that they believe they can internally replace. So maybe they do not pay Jermaine Johnson, but if they do, maybe, if you bring back Hassan Reddick, who are you not paying? Like, whether it's Quincy Williams in a couple of years, is it going to be, they already paid Michael Carter. Is it going to be Breece Hall? Like, if you extend Hassan Reddick, you are now forced to make difficult financial decisions with other players. So that's why I'm against that, especially given everything that has transpired over the last few months. I don't think the Jets should extend Hassan Reddick, and I don't think that they will. I also don't think they're going to trade him. Things could change. Again, I don't know the internal dynamics. If Hassan Reddick is dead set against on not playing for the Jets, like he's just going to refuse to play for the Jets at this stage, and the Jets are just so rid of the headache, or so tired of this headache, they would just want to get rid of him. I could see
not even that. Like, you could get an asset for a title run.
I don't think you're getting much because
it's something at least, instead of Reddick, which is currently nothing.
Well, you got to remember that if he walks in the offseason, you're going to get a comp pick for him, assuming that you don't spend more than you take in. I think that comp pick could be pretty high, obviously depends on the contract that he receives, but I don't think it's going to be a third unless he comes back soon and balls out. Then it could be a third, but it could be like a fourth in 2026. And you gave up a third in 2026 already to get him, so you wouldn't be losing much. I don't think you're getting back a 4th-round pick in 2026 if you trade him right now. Like, I think his value is significantly lower than that because whoever is trading for him has to pay him a contract that, to our knowledge, no other team is willing to pay him unless he relinquishes those demands and just says, well, get me out of New York. Now I don't care about getting paid. I just don't want to play for the Jets. I don't know Hassan Reddick, but if assuming he still has the same motivations, then I don't know, man. I don't think they should do it, and I don't think that they will do it. I think their most likely approach right now is, I think there still could be a compromise. I think the most likely time for that compromise is after this week, because now you have 10 days after tomorrow's game. You have 10 days to really regroup, assess where your team is at, depending on what happens in that Patriots game, see how much you really want him and how much you really need him, and see how much he really wants to play. And if maybe a compromise can be reached then, awesome. If there's no compromise reached before week 4, Mike, and this is what you were alluding to, I don't think there will be one. Or at least I lose a lot of confidence. Not that I really have much confidence at this stage, but most of the confidence I have remaining would be gone if they don't reach a deal before week 4. As for what happens after that, I don't know. Because if they don't trade him, he does have to show up. Like, we've talked about this on the show. He cannot hold out the entire season. He will be forced to play for the Jets in 2025. They will retain his rights if he holds out the entire season. So the latest he could possibly show up, to my knowledge, is the Tuesday following week 10. That is the latest he could possibly show up. Then he can try and fake an injury if he wants to, but the Jets could always, that could get really messy because the Jets would probably file a grievance. It's a very messy situation. I wouldn't be stunned if they traded him. I'd be more surprised if they extended him.
I've never seen anything like that. And again, Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell was basically like a free agent because he never signed a contract that year. Reddick's under contract with the team.
Yeah.
Never, and this is not like oh, this is like a Jets fan, because we support the players 90% of the time in these things. So think of everything that had to have gone wrong for us to be like, this player, Hassan Reddick, is being stupid. And this is not just because he's on the Jets and he's depriving the Jets. He could have been on Arizona, and we would have said the exact same thing. This is horrendously stupid. It just happens to be happening to the Jets.
I was one of the few people that defended Jamal Adams when that was happening. Because
I did too. I wouldn't want to play for Adam Gase. And he at least had the excuse too of, I want to play for a winning team, not Adam Gase. Hassan Reddick doesn't even have that.
And the Jets did not want to pay him what he wanted, and other teams were willing to pay him that. Like, maybe he could have handled it differently. Scheduling a meeting or an interview with Manish Mehta to just publicly bash the Jets was a pretty wild move on his part.
Don't speak his name on the show.
And sorry to mention Manish Mehta. If I say it, it's like Beetlejuice. If I say it a third time, he'll appear. But obviously, his actions since then, and stuff with Connor Hughes last year, was bad. But I don't think he did anything inherently wrong by holding out and demanding a new contract, demanding a trade, because if other teams were willing to pay him that, then cool. Hassan Reddick, by all accounts, no team is willing to pay him. So what is the end goal? If no team wants to give you this contract, you're holding out for nothing. We'll get to a few comments here in chat before we move on. Aaron is saying something. Aaron from YouTube. This is something that has been proposed by a lot of people. I've seen this thrown out there. Aaron says, Huff doesn't seem to be doing well with the Eagles. Can we trade Reddick back to the Eagles and we get Huff back? Seems like Huff produces better in our system.
No.
It's bizarre. That
wish it could happen, but no.
This is a swap that I thought would be such a slam dunk win-win for both teams, and it's like been I can't think of a worse like lose-lose swap in recent years than this. Like this,
and immediately
it's been brutal for both teams, but unfortunately the finances are tricky. Also, the Eagles traded Hassan Reddick because they don't want to pay him. So why would they trade for him back, knowing the same situation is still there? But I do appreciate the idea. A lot of people have been throwing out there. Eagles fans specifically have been saying that because they are sick of Bryce Huff, and it makes me very sad. James Gilby on YouTube said, I just wish we signed Huff to a 3-year cheap deal at the beginning of the season, like we did with Quincy. Yep. Ideally, that's what you would have done. I don't want to hear the Jets fans being like, oh, he's struggling in Philly. He's been the most efficient pass rusher in the NFL 2 years in a row with the Jets. We know it works for the Jets. I don't care if it doesn't work anywhere else. We know it works here. And what Bryce Huff did with the Jets last year, I'd gladly pay $17 million or even less if they had signed him earlier for. And then last, Daniel Tannenbaum, hope no relation to Mike, on Facebook, says Hassan Reddick is an afterthought. Stick with UDFA.
It's not working now. It's what they did already. It's not working.
Yeah, no. I mean, again, it's a complicated situation talking about the finances, but if we're talking about just him being an afterthought, he's one of the best players on the Jets roster. And if you could get him under contract and get him out there, it changes how your defense operates. So,
the first snap he plays, he's probably a top 3-4 player on this defense.
Yeah.
He's probably a top 10 edge rusher right now.
In a lot of defenses, he's probably higher than that too. It's just the Jets defense is loaded. Sauce, Quinnen, Quincy, I'd put ahead of him firmly. Everyone else, I think, is totally. I think he's probably fourth best.
Philly traded him. He's probably the best player on the Eagles defense right now.
Maybe, yeah. You can make that argument. You can definitely make that argument.
Like, I get that. It'd be a nice story if the undrafted guy played well. And I get that the undrafted guy certainly has a fire in them to prove themselves that Hassan Reddick, I don't think, has right now. But like, Hassan Reddick just better, a lot better than a lot of these guys will ever be. And that's just Walter Cronkite. That's the way it is. Like, that is no amount of fire and trying hard can immediately make Braden McGregor better than Hassan Reddick in 2024. 3 years down the line, who knows? Yep. For 2024, no shot. It's close. That's why I think there has to be some sort of like, all right, let's at least talk about it, Hassan, or Hassan's agent. Because if nothing happens after the Broncos game, I don't think they're going to give him an extension for the rest of the year. And then it's even more of a mess. This is just
real quick. I was going to move on to the next segment, but real quick, we talked about this before. Nick Ginsburg on Facebook says it's ridiculous. We were supposed to be going for it, yet we can't just throw money at a guy who will help us greatly. If we lose tomorrow, he'll be signed by Monday. It's not that simple.
He hasn't even shown up yet.
Yeah, it's not as simple as throwing money at him. Because again, Nick, if you just throw money at Hassan Reddick and you give him exactly what he wants right now, which is a 4-year extension, 25 to 28 million, that's what's been reported. If you give him that, who are you not paying? Because somebody, if not multiple players, get the short end of the stick if you do that. Could be Jermaine Johnson, could be Breece Hall. If you are committing long-term money to Hassan Reddick, then you are not doing it for other players. And that's why the Jets have been reluctant. The Jets are willing to give him as much money as he wants now, like in the short term. They can do that. Loaded incentives, give him guarantees. They can do all that. They are willing to do that. They're not willing to give him a long-term extension. Maybe that changes if they lose. You're right. If they lose tomorrow, maybe that it does change. Maybe Joe Douglas feels the seat heating up and maybe he changes his mind. But it's not as simple as just pay the guy. But Mike.
If it was as simple as just pay the guy, there wouldn't have been an issue.
Correct. Mike, I think it's time for a segment that I'm very excited for.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Justin's excited. I'm excited for the segment. I think Justin's more excited for the name than the segment.
I like silly things, and this is a silly name, okay? We're going to be debuting a new segment that I'd like to call the Gangrene Stat Machine.
Okay. I'm a fan of this segment. I think we should let the audience decide if the name sticks.
But if you will, you could call it the GGSM, which may or may not.
But again, that sounds kind of.
Look, we already have.
Sounds like some stuff Shannon Sharp would accidentally live stream. So.
We already have the Woodies, man. Okay, now we have the GGSM. Okay.
Isn't this a football podcast? Yes, it is. So let's go on to the first segment.
With this segment, we're basically, I've been, I like to do a lot of stat research after games and pull out some stats. I usually put it on Twitter, but I love to talk about them on the show and kind of, get your thoughts on some of this. And first, I want to start it off with the offensive line, Mike, because the Jets' offensive line was exceptional in week 2. How exceptional? Well, I'll give you a couple of stats. There's one stat here on the screen right now, which is that every single starting offensive lineman for the Jets had a PFF pass block grade of above 76. The last time that has happened in a game, Mike, I'm calling it the stat thing, and I don't even have the stat pulled up. The last time that happened in a game was 2010 for the Jets. 2010, week 4 of 2010 was the last time that every single starting offensive lineman for the Jets had a PFF pass block grade above 76. The starters for that offensive line were Brickashaw Ferguson, Matt Slauson, Nick Mangold, Brandon Moore, and Damian Woody. The Jets offensive line also, if you don't like PFF grades, allowed 1 pressure in week 2. Now, Breece Hall allowed 2 by himself. So the team as a whole allowed 3, but the offensive line allowed 1 pressure. Joe Tippmann was the one who allowed that pressure. It actually resulted in a sack. The last time a Jets offensive line has allowed 1 or fewer pressures in a game, week 11 of 2012. Starters in that O-line were the same, except Austin Howard started in place of Damian Woody, and Austin Howard predictably was the one who allowed that pressure. That's how good this was. This was genuinely the best pass blocking performance the Jets offensive line has had in 12 years. You cannot say enough about how good this offensive line has been, at least from a pass protection standpoint, through 2 weeks.
You want the negative take or the positive take first?
What's the negative take? Let's get it out of the way.
I feel like these numbers, amazing though they are aided slightly because the Jets overwhelmingly had the shortest time to throw in the league. They're getting the ball out quick.
I agree. It's a team effort. In fact, the stat for that, Aaron Rodgers ranked second in time to throw and shortest time to throw in week 2, only behind Tua Tagovailoa, who didn't even play the entire game. So that is definitely part of it. Aaron Rodgers getting the ball out very, very quick. That's part of this. I'm with you.
Positives. They won a game, and Tyron Smith, who's a Hall of Famer, I think we could all acknowledge that, was great as their worst lineman, and he's Tyron Smith, who's amazing.
At least
that's how good this was. And again, we talked about how worried we were about the Titans' defensive line. Tavondre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons, Harold Landry, that's one of the strengths of this team.
Yep.
And after they just got bullied by San Francisco, who I think outside of Nick Bosa has a fairly average, maybe even below average defensive line if you take Bosa out of it, I'm like, I don't know how they're going to run the ball against those two in the middle. And they did. I don't know how they're going to protect Aaron Rodgers. And they did.
Yep. And I got another stat for you with that. Jeffrey Simmons, who is, all-pro defensive lineman for the Titans, one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL, in his last 33 games, Sunday was only the second time where he failed to record at least 1 pressure in his last 33 games. In fact, every game he played in 2023, he had at least 2 pressures. He didn't have a single pressure in Sunday's game. That's how good this Jets offensive line was. It was exceptional. And Tyron Smith also graded out very, very well as a run blocker, as did, I believe, Joe Tippmann, who was, I think, PFF's second highest graded center of the week. I still think the run blocking has to improve. It got better in the second half of this past game. But the pass protection has been exceptional. And I just, for as much shit as we've given Joe Douglas, for as much flack as he's gotten, as much criticism as we've given him for, or at least I've given him for his defensive line mistakes, in my opinion, this offseason, the work he did to revamp this offensive line is exceptional, like truly, truly, truly exceptional. And I know some of that is, he's made mistakes in the past. Like obviously he had to replace Mekhi Becton because he failed with drafting Mekhi Becton. Like I get that. I fully understand that. But the Jets had to add 3 new starters this offseason. They did so in adding Tyron Smith, John Simpson, and Morgan Moses. The 3 of them have a combined cap hit of a little over $11 million. That's ridiculous. Like to revamp the offensive line in the way that he did on the budget that he had, you could argue that's one of the best moves maybe it's the best move that he's made as general manager during his time with the Jets.
I want to kind of combine the next 2 into one because I think they're both equally odd.
Okay.
Sauce Gardner, who did not allow a catch for 3 straight games?
Yeah.
And didn't allow 35 yards for over a year in a row, gave up almost 100 yards. So easily the worst game he's ever played.
Yep.
On the same token, Brandon Echols, who has been toasted a little bit, has a 0.0 passer rating when targeted, only 1 catch for 6 yards allowed on 4 targets. And he has that tremendous interception where we talked about how we thought Chuck Clark picked that ball off and then Calvin Ridley had the touchdown. Yeah. I thought Treylon Burks caught that ball.
Same.
And Brandon Echols came out with the pick. I'm not overly concerned about Sauce. I know that he had some sort of shoulder thing, it looked like, in the San Francisco game. I know he got the wind knocked out of him. But he still didn't allow a catch in that game, so he was still Sauce.
Yep.
And as we mentioned before, the body type of these Calvin Ridley, Stephon Diggs guys, those are like the only guys who've really had consistent success against him. Everybody else has literally had like 1 or 2 catches every single game. Even good guys like CeeDee Lamb had like 2 catches against him. Mm-hmm. So you're allowed occasional stinkers. I mean, Tom Brady's thrown 3 picks in a game. Barry Sanders had 1 playoff game where he had negative yards rushing. It happens. Mm-hmm. I'm not too alarmed. I don't think Echols will be this good all the time, but the fact he was this good makes me a lot more confident in the secondary, especially with DJ Reed and Michael Carter both battling injuries. Yep. And we still really didn't know who that 6th defensive back was going to be. Is it going to be Quantez Stiggers? Is it going to be Jar Bernard-Converse? Is it going to be Echols? Echols has taken ownership of that role, and he played one of his best games of his career.
That he did. And give this man his flowers. I don't know if you saw, Mike, after the game, he was literally throwing up on the sideline because he was that exhausted. Like because he played the most snaps that he has played in a game since his rookie season. He played all 100% of snaps. It was like 55 or something like that. Dude gave his all out there.
Why is there an epidemic of NFL players throwing up lately?
Well, conditioning.
The guy in the Packers game, the center,
conditioning. Maybe it probably has something to do with guys not playing in the preseason. I don't think Echols played a ton in the preseason either. The Jets were kind of holding him out, at least I think in that last game. I don't think he played at all. So that might have something to do with it as well. But yeah, I mean, give the man his flowers. Sauce, like you said, I'm not worried. Like he was on a legitimately historic heater before that. I think it was in his last 9 games, he'd allowed 6 catches for 59 yards. I think was the exact stats. Yeah. In his last 9 games, he allowed 6 catches for 59 yards. Yeah, that is literally the stats is right here.
Or as Pat Surtain calls it, 2 games.
Oh, I love it. That's actually ridiculous. And then he hadn't allowed a catch in 3 games. This was in 4 games essentially. Ridiculous. A ridiculous heater that it was bound to eventually come to an end. And also, these numbers would look a lot worse or a lot better if the Ridley play. I hate to say if it didn't happen, but that was such a freak play that happened. You could tell Sauce expected Chuck Clark to knock it away. He also was kind of protecting his body because he didn't want to get run over by Chuck Clark, so he kind of shied away, and somehow the ball just snuck through to Calvin Ridley. So if that play doesn't happen, his numbers are likely a lot better as it stands. I believe his PFF coverage grade was 20 points lower than any other grade that he's ever had in a single game in his career, which is ridiculous. But I'm not particularly concerned. One last guy I want to talk about before we get to Patriots conversation, which is coming in a second. Jamie and Sherwood. Mike, we got to talk about Jamie and Sherwood because there's a really good chance he's starting again tomorrow. CJ Mosley is now listed as questionable with a toe injury, but he did not practice all week. I don't think he's going to play. I've been singing Jamie and Sherwood's praises for a while. I think in the summer I said that I thought he was a starting caliber linebacker in this league, and we saw that. PFF's highest graded Jets defender in week 2. He was the 5th highest graded linebacker in the NFL this week. 10 tackles, 4 run stops, 78.3 PFF coverage grade. Of course, he had that one play in coverage where it just bounced off his head. I don't know why Will let us through that still, but he did. Sherwood was exceptional. And I saw a lot of Jets fans saying they noticed a turnaround. As soon as Mosley went out and Sherwood came in, the defense improved. I don't want to bash CJ Mosley. I don't think he was bad last week, and I don't think he's been bad this season necessarily. But maybe he's losing a step. Maybe as you get to whatever he is now, 32, you're bound to lose a step as a linebacker. And I don't think he's washed by any means, but I think Jamien Sherwood's really, really good, and I would love to see if he can maybe take over as a starter in the near future, maybe as soon as 2025.
Mosley's in that Bobby Wagner thing where it's like he's still productive, but he gets a lot of reputation. But I'm like, he's an elite linebacker. Look at the tackles. It's like, well, like he's good, but not that good, I think, is Mosley. Sherwood, it's funny because Robert Saleh gets this reputation as like a defensive line guru. People forget before he went to San Francisco, his 2 stops before that were linebackers coach in Jacksonville. Paul Posluszny, Miles Jack are both kind of 2 of his guys. And then before that, he was an assistant with the Legion of Boom. Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, like he knows linebackers very well. And I remember when they drafted him because he was a safety in college. They had him and Hamza Nasruddin.
Yeah,
I thought Hamza was like I thought Hamza was going to be the guy. I liked him a lot at Florida State. And they basically had them competing for the same role, and Sherwood beat him out. And originally he struggled. I thought he was just kind of like not to insult him here, but almost like a Calvin Pryor guy where it's like, okay, he's physical and he hits hard, but can he do all the other stuff? And yeah, he can do the other stuff very well. So if he develops now Sherwood, if he develops Quincy Williams into being an all-pro linebacker, Mosley going from injuries and not playing the COVID year, so basically 2 years are a wash, to an all-pro linebacker like he was recently, Saleh also has got to show the rest of the league, like, hey, I'm not just a defensive line guy. You give me a linebacker, I'll coach him up.
Exactly. All right. Before we get into Patriots talk, I got one more thing to tell you. We talked about it earlier in the show, but for those who weren't there, we are happy to be announcing that we are now partnering with Underdog Fantasy for this football season. Over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by making picks on Underdog. You can win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player stats, touchdowns, passing yards, more. This is the first week that I'm using Underdog Fantasy, and I'm already pretty excited, honestly. My picks this week, so this is the first time I'm making picks on Underdog Fantasy. I kind of had to figure it out. Honestly, very simple to figure out. One of the picks that I have is basically like a free pick. They offer this. I have Aaron Rodgers higher than 0.5 total yards. Like I said, free pick, unless we get a 2023 week 1 version of Aaron Rodgers, which I don't want to speak that into existence. That hopefully will hit. I have Breece Hall as a pick higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. So basically Breece Hall scoring a touchdown. And Ramondre Stevenson higher than 65.5 rushing yards. Seems like a pretty fair pick. I still have some concerns with the Jets run defense. And Stevenson, I believe, rushed for over 80 yards in each of his first 2 games. So that's what I got this week. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog, simple to use mobile app, or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with the promo code PRESS, that's PRESS, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code PRESS to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Okay, now the disclaimer. This is a mouthful. Must be 18 and older, 21 and older in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 and older in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, you can call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY, which is 467-369. Hell yeah, crush that. Mike, let's talk Patriots.
Well, Justin goes and towels off for his mid-round break here. We're going to go welcome in a very special guest because we got some New England Patriots talk. It's rivalry week, and it's another primetime game. So Jets and Patriots in primetime, especially on Thursday night, those historically go very well for the Jets, don't they? That wasn't where the butt fumble happened, was it? Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it was.
That's Thanksgiving. That's different. That's different.
That's it. Thursday night prime time.
It's different.
I'm technically correct. I am. So
to
help us find out what exactly is going on in New England, we have a very special guest. You can check her out on Musket Fire, which is FanSided's New England Patriots site. Our good friend Sara Marshall. Sara, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So I think the big question that everybody's going to be asking about the Patriots, and you're going to pretty much be dogged with this until some resolution happens, is when are they going to see Drake May? And Jacoby Brissett, he's been good. He's been okay so far, but I don't think he's certainly not been good enough to where they're going to – the May fan club has really quieted down. So your best estimation, when do you think Drake May plays?
Oh, that is such a hard question because I was under the impression all offseason I wasn't somebody who ever thought whatever rookie that they drafted was going to play this year. And that didn't change with it being Drake May. So I'm not 100% on board with it happening. I don't know if it's going to happen, but if you watch or paying attention to kind of like what the coaching staff has been doing, Drake May's now been getting 30% of starting reps in practice, which is huge for a rookie, a quarterback. So it seems like there might be a plan in place that they want to put him in at some point. It's hard because the schedule is so hard this year. So it doesn't feel like there's really this like plateau time where it's like, all right, this is the best time to be putting May in. I think that it's inevitably going to happen if Brissett gets hurt, obviously, or they're eliminated from the playoffs in October. You know what I mean? Like at that point, I think it's like, yeah, throw May out there, but the offensive line is such a mess that it's a little bit scary to think about putting May out there. So I'm kind of like, I'm fine with him sitting. I'm one of the very few people who are on that boat, but it is what it is, you know?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the offensive line because I know they're dealing with a couple of injuries there too. That left side is pretty banged up. Adarian Lowe, City So, I think are both out for this week.
Yep, Okorafor left. So
just got up and left.
Yeah, he
Vontae
did.
Davis, I quit.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't know what happened. It just like popped up on Saturday. He was put on the exempt/left list. I was like, I didn't even know that this was something that existed. I was like, what is this?
You can't fire me. I quit.
Yeah. So he got pulled from the first game after 12 snaps. And so we think that might have something to do with it. So, yeah, all of the starting offensive linemen have been injured this week, and the two starters on the left side are out. So
wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the concern level? Also, who can you fill us in on who is like what is the projected starting offensive line for the Patriots this week?
So it's Layden Robinson will be I think he's playing right tackle. Onwenu will be at right guard. David Andrews center, and then I believe the left side is going to be Caden Wallace at left tackle. And who's at left guard? I don't even remember.
It's not good.
There's been so many changes.
They just signed Michael Jordan, not that.
Oh, that's right. Yes, Michael Jordan will play.
60-year-old skinny Michael Jordan.
Yes, he's coming. He instead of going back to golf, he's playing football now. So, yeah. So it's a mess. Yeah. Not ideal. I mean, they have a couple guys on the practice squad. I assume that they'll see some time eventually, but there's a reason they brought up Michael Jordan. So I think that's what it's going to be. I mean, Caden Wallace was an interesting pick from the beginning. And, you know, guys like Louis Riddick have raved about the type of player that he can be. So now he's getting a starting spot, and we'll have to see if he can hold it down on the left side. Otherwise, I mean, you guys might have a field day on the left side. So, you know, that could be great for you guys.
Caden Wallace from Robbinsville, New Jersey. So I gotta shout him out. Although he went to Hun, which I question his decision skills because they're Hun. But
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, believe you would if you grew up
Long
there.
Island, Jersey is a foreign land to me. Sorry.
Looking at the Patriots, who everybody just expected to get rolled these first 2 weeks, they beat the Bengals and narrowest loss possible against the Seahawks. Looking at Gerard Mayo, I kind of like the hire because I thought it would have been too crazy to have Belichick leave and then just have someone come in who's totally different and just get rid of everything. And this is how I run things now. It seems to me, and maybe you can stop me if I say something out of line, but it seems to me like he's blended the good parts of Belichick, which are attention to detail, defense is very strong, but he's got rid of some of the bad parts, which are at the end, it felt very rigid, very old school, very not willing to change anything. It seems like he's put his own flavor on the Belichick thing in a way that a lot of other Belichick assistants, you know, Matt Patricia, Romeo Crennel, Joshua Daniels, we can give you all the Belichick guys who failed as coaches in a way that they really haven't.
No, I agree 100%. And I think he is a unique person because he played for Belichick his entire career, then became a coach and learned alongside him, and then was being groomed to be the head coach eventually. As early as I think 2026 is what they were really aiming for. I think Belichick's contract was going to be up next year. So it's a little bit earlier, but I think, yeah, he's taking the best parts that he knows that works, like just the fundamentals of football and that tough love that you need. But he's been labeled already a player's coach, and usually that has a negative connotation. And that's why I think he's pushing back on it. But you can definitely tell there is a much lighter aura in the Patriots locker room, because it was really dark these last 2 years. And I know for people who don't like the Patriots, I'm sure you guys were loving that.
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean,
yeah.
I couldn't enjoy it fully because we had to watch Zach Wilson.
Right.
And that seemed like one the few times the Patriots had some life is when they played Zach Wilson. But
true.
Man, after years of Tom Brady, I'm like, oh, this is welcome to hell, Patriots fans. This is what NFL's like.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been a nice change, like obviously there's going to be a learning curve, and he's already kind of putting his foot in his mouth a couple times, which he's definitely been roasted by Boston media and fans. But I think, this was going to be a year exactly how we thought. It's going to be a rebuilding year, a learning year. There's going to be a lot of changes that they're going to have to adapt to. And I was more optimistic about how this season was going to go. So I'm not really surprised that they've hung in there at the beginning of the year. I can't say that I'm too confident as the season goes on. I mean, they play the Niners soon, and you guys know the schedule is pretty rough this year, but we'll see. I think they'll be better next year, that when they can finally get a left tackle or something, so I don't have to sit here and scratch my head thinking about who's on the offensive line because it's changed so much. That would be great.
I want to get your vibe check essentially for how Patriots fans are feeling going into this week, because it's a bizarre situation for both of these teams to be in. The Jets have every single time the Jets play the Patriots, even if it was last year, I don't think Jets fans are ever confident going into a game against Patriots, but right now the Jets are 6.5-point home favorites against Patriots. I don't know the last time. It's probably out there on Twitter somewhere. I haven't seen it. The last time the Jets were 6.5-point favorites in a game against the Patriots. I know that the vibe from Jets fans, we got James in chat here saying that I'll be there tomorrow for the Jets game. If we lose to a non-Bill and non-Brady Pats team, I'm done. So that's kind of
you won't. You're too far into it, James. You've sat through too much to be done now.
That's kind of the vibe that I'm sure a lot of Jets fans might be able to echo, but how are Patriots fans going into this game? Do they feel confident because it's the Jets, or are they kind of thinking we are the underdogs?
We're the underdogs.
Okay.
I mean, Patriots fans for the most part are kind of very up and down as it is, as I'm sure you know. For the most part, they're very negative because, we came into the offseason, and I've talked about this a lot, came into the offseason expecting this to be kind of like a down year because the significant coaching changes, the rookie quarterback, but having Jacoby Brissett and not having the offense that everybody dreamed that they would this year. So it was we accepted it. It was all right, this is going to be a rebuilding year. We'll be good next year. Then the second they saw Drake May throw a great ball in preseason, the Super Bowl was back on their mind. And I'm delusional guys, stop. So some people are still there and they can't break that mindset of we got to be competitive this year. And I'm 6 months ago, we were all here together. We were embracing the rebuild. So I'm sure there are some that still feel that there is a chance, and there's always a chance, it's football any given Sunday. But I would say based off of just how, Aaron Rodgers is in the lineup again, they didn't play him last year, and all the injuries that the Patriots are dealing with, especially on the offensive line, the lack of wide receiver usage by Jacoby Brissett so far is not making us feel too comfy against the Jets on our only primetime game of the year. Because at the beginning you said another primetime game. I'm I don't even know what that means anymore. What is primetime? I don't know.
Imagine watching Zach Wilson in primetime. As Brian points out in chat, though, too, this is only the fourth time since 2016 the Jets have been a 4-point favorite.
If any team. That's crazy, man.
That's great. Expect it to stay that way, though. The Patriots are underdogs for every single game this year. So if it continues to get worse, you guys might be even 8-point favorites by the next time we play you or something.
I think that's gonna change. I'm not confident going into this game, Mike. I don't know what
really,
your thoughts are, but I'm not confident. I can't be confident against the Patriots. And
Sarah, when I was confident going into games last year?
Yeah.
Look what happened.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I think, seeing how, okay, all respect to you guys, okay, but seeing how poorly your run defense has been the first 2 weeks, that makes me feel like, okay, if I'm going to say confidence level, it's like 30-70. It went from 20-80 to 30-70 maybe, simply because Ramondre Stevenson had, I think, 120 yards and a touchdown in the first game. He had 80 last week and a touchdown, and Antonio Gibson had over 90 yards last week, which was huge for him. It was his breakout game. So I'm like, all right, if we're not going to use the receivers that we have when we have 6 of them on the roster, we're just going to pretend they're not there, and they're just going to rely on the running backs. This might be the week to do that then. We might not be able to complain about Demario Douglas being invisible because we have Ramondre and Antonio, but we'll see, because I mean, you guys know that was your weak points the last 2 weeks, and you know that the Patriots are going to go with that. So you might be more prepared, which is a little scary.
Especially no Jermaine Johnson.
Yeah, no Jermaine Johnson too. And the other thing too is last year, if you don't value your time and you watch Commanders Jets on Christmas Eve, you will see that we don't value our time.
We were watching it. We did a stream on Christmas Eve.
Yes, we did, with my younger brother coming on. But Jacoby Brissett in that game threw 2 touchdowns and narrowly led a comeback victory. As me and Justin have talked about in the show before, the way the Jets scheme is set up, they typically do very well against quarterbacks. They get very antsy trying to make big plays. That's why Josh Allen often struggles against this defense. Will Levis had a couple horrible bonehead plays. Again, even Mahomes threw 2 interceptions, should have had 3. 1 got overturned. Like that's the quarterback that this defense frustrates more than any of them. Brissett, in a weird way, might be better equipped to face this defense because he will take what they give him a lot. He will march down the field. He doesn't always look for big chunk plays. So, and I will say too, because I think Brissett's gotten kind of a bad rap over the years. I will say he's bounced around the league. Every year he's in a new city, new scheme, new coaches. He's been backup starter, back and forth. And his numbers are not terrible.
No, he's good.
Look at him. So I do have some weird respect for Brissett in that regard.
Yeah, he's actually, I think it's interception ratio or whatever it is. He's only below Aaron Rodgers for like the best in the last, I forget how many years. It's a crazy stat, and like no one wants to believe it because it's like Jacoby Brissett is anywhere near Aaron Rodgers in a stat. That's crazy, but no, it is. And he's done a fairly good job. I mean, considering how poor the offensive line has been so far, and the pressure rate is one of the worst in the league. He has avoided sacks. Like and the good thing is you don't have to hold your breath every time. And I'm knocking on wood real hard right now, because if I say this out loud too many times, I'm scared. But last year, anytime pressure came in Mac Jones's face, I mean, in general, but especially last year, you were scared. You're like, all right, where's the pick 6? We're waiting on it. Don't have to necessarily fear that this time with Brissett, which I think is a nice luxury to have. He knows when to get rid of the football. He knows when to protect it, which is good because so far he's not committed any turnovers. Again, knocking on wood. And that is something that I think people are overlooking, because there's definitely faults that, and things that he's not doing great at, but at least he's not turning the ball over and we're sitting here like handing the opponents a bunch of points like we were a year ago.
Yeah, and that's why I'm concerned. I mean, one of the only reasons the Jets beat the Titans was because they won the turnover battle. They didn't turn the ball over. The Titans turned it over twice, and Will Levis had a couple of boneheaded plays. I don't think we're going to see that from Jacoby Brissett. I think if they get pressure on him, which even though they're really beaten up on the D-line, you'd hope that they do, given the state of the Patriots O-line. Even if they do get pressure on him, you're going to see a lot of checkdowns to Hunter Henry. You're going to see checkdowns to Antonio Gibson, because that's what he's been doing, even if they're not targeting the wide receivers, because let's be honest, Pop Douglas against Sauce Gardner or KJ Osborne against DJ Reed or whatever. Like that's not a favorable matchup for the Patriots. They're going to go after guys like Hunter Henry and Antonio Gibson or Ramondre Stevenson underneath, and just that's how they're going to attack this Jets defense. And that does have me concerned for this week. I do want to ask you though, real quick, Sara, because I feel like for the first time in a while, this Patriots team is really kind of devoid of a lot of like top end talent. There's not a ton. Christian Gonzalez is a fantastic young corner, and I know a lot of people talk about him when you're talking about some of the best players in this team. Who is somebody that Jets fans might not really know a lot about that is an important player on this Patriots team and could have a big impact in tomorrow's game?
Someone you don't know a lot about.
Yeah, like an underrated X factor, essentially.
Okay, well, I mean, see, that's the thing. My first thing is, you guys know Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers.
Sure.
the safeties. I mean, the secondary in general, Jonathan Jones is pretty good. Marcus Jones. You guys know Marcus Jones too. I'm gonna say he's an X factor, but you unfortunately
remember that punt return, the punt return that killed Zach Wilson's career.
Yep.
Yes, so he's back, and he has already been killing it on special teams. They're using him also in the secondary because he kind of bounces around. Thank God they're not using him on the offense. Maybe that's gonna change. I have no idea. But he's been doing great. I think. I think the defensive line could potentially be it. Like maybe. Jelani Tavai. He could potentially be a big name to watch because of the Juwan Bentley injury. So we're going to see like him, Raekwon McMillan, and Daniel Aquayle. Like they might be the guys that kind of step up. Keon White. I'm not trying to jump a bunch, but like.
Oh, you got it.
Keon White has been an absolute monster so far. He's gotten 4 sacks. After doing nothing his rookie year. I think he got half a sack or 1 sack through the entire season last year. Definitely, names that are going up the list and have had some really good performances like Tavai and Aquayle last year. And now that we have no Christian Barmore, no Matthew Judon, now they're down Juwan Bentley. Those are the guys that are probably going to step up, and they might be the ones wreaking havoc on you. So fingers crossed, because that Bentley news was heartbreaking, honestly.
It's brutal. They've been pretty ravaged. It is notable that you only mentioned defensive players, not a single offensive player.
I know. Well, it's like because Hunter Henry, we saw he had the best game of his career statistic-wise last week. You guys know who Hunter Henry is.
Of course.
Jalen Polk got his first touchdown last week, but because you guys have such a good secondary, I'm not going to name receivers because they're not throwing the football that much. And I don't know that you want to throw it that much against a secondary like the Jets. So I'm like, if it goes to Hunter Henry, sure, you guys are prepared for it, but it's not a secret,
To follow up on your point, Jacoby Brissett has the lowest interception percentage in NFL history at 1.4%.
And its second least is Aaron Rodgers. They have the 2 lowest interception percentages.
Insane, isn't it? Like, granted, the size of their careers are drastically different. However, when you think about Aaron Rodgers holding a stat like that, you're like, wow, that's impressive. And you think about who's above him, Tom Brady, right? Patrick Mahomes. No, Jacoby Brissett. Like, that's insanity. So I do give him credit for that, because I think like Mike said, he can be kind of overlooked, or even in some ways I would say disrespected. He's not a great quarterback, but obviously he's been good enough, solid enough to be in the league as long as he has. So that counts for something.
I will say too, before we get into prediction time too, Keon White is in my Michael Clemens club of guys. He's just a scary looking dude, Keon White.
He's a very serious guy too. Like I'm sure you guys saw he went viral when he was drafted because he looked pissed that he got drafted. Yeah. And it was like, is he mad that he was in the second and not in the first? Is he pissed that he went to the Patriots? I don't know, but that's how he looks all the time. So he's just got that face.
He's no Michael Clemens showing up to Hard Knocks with no shirt and a bat with barbed wire on it. But
it's possible. I would not be surprised, honestly.
Prediction time. Sara, given how the Patriots are, I think a modicum better than we expected, because I don't think anybody, even the biggest dire homer, expected the Cincinnati game to go like it did.
No.
Where do you think they're at? Because the Patriots are depleted, but you know what? Jets are kind of depleted too. They're banged up. No Jermaine Johnson. Will they take advantage, or are our Jets going to be 2-1?
I am an optimist. That's something I like to credit myself for, because if you're not familiar with New England media, they are far from optimistic. And that was just how it was even with Tom Brady. Tom Brady sucked 15 years ago, according to New England media. So
at least with New York media, the sports are always bad. So you at least say you're telling the truth when you're negative.
Yeah. No, this was, what is it? The Trent Dilfer, that clip that went viral about him saying that they needed to bench Brady or whatever. That was like what the media was saying here too. And it's like, he went on to win like 3 more Super Bowls after that. So it's like, that's just Boston media. So I'm going to say, I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think it's not going to be a shootout. It's not going to be anything like that. Like, I don't think we're going to dominate you. I don't know that you're necessarily going to dominate us. Because I'm an optimist and I just want to put this out into the universe, I'm going to say the Patriots win by like 3. And it's only because of our run game. That's what I'm going to say. If they just like utilize the heck out of Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson, both of them who can also be used in the passing game, I think they might have a leg up on you guys, because it's like the injuries to your defensive line after 2 weeks of allowing over 100 yards on the ground doesn't bode well for going against two really good dual threat running backs. And that's what the Patriots have been using. So I'm going to say it's going to be like by 3. And again, knocking on wood, because I don't want to put any negative vibes out there.
I will. I think the Jets will win, but
Okay.
I think it is going to be very close. I think it's going to be an under game if you're a betting person, because the biggest concern I have is I feel bad for Garrett Wilson getting Charvarius Ward, Algerius Sneed, and then Christian Gonzalez back to back, and then Pat Surtain the week after, all in a row to start the year. Mike Williams, I think, can be good, but really at wide receiver, the Jets don't have that like second guy. Now, we think Williams could be it, but until he shows it, they're going to have to be a run-first team. Like this is going to be low-scoring, old-school, strap it up, let's run up the middle kind of football. So I think it'll be low-scoring, and I think Brissett will move the ball, but I have a hard time believing if Sauce is still what he is and he rebounds from that bad game last week, and the depleted Patriots offensive line, the stoppable force versus the movable object of the Jets banged up defensive line. If the Jets can somehow win that, because Will McDonald's still playing and Quinnen Williams is still playing, if they can get home, I'm going to say maybe, I don't know, like a 20-17 kind of thing, or like a 23-17 kind of score.
Definitely close, I think.
Justin, where are you at?
This means I'm the tiebreaker, doesn't it? Oh boy.
Yes, it does.
Just pick the Jets. Pick the Jets. Come
I've been going back and forth here. I'm going to pick the Patriots.
Dude.
Okay, I'm not going to take this. I'm very superstitious, so I'm just going to say thank you and just be like, if you're wrong, I blame you.
You know who to blame if it does go wrong now. So.
My psyche will not allow me to pick the Jets to beat the Patriots. And it's more than that. I am genuinely concerned for a lot of reasons I already said. As Brian and Chad is pointing out here, Brissett in 4 games versus the Jets, 34 of 44, 346 passing yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick, 55 rushing yards. Those are good numbers. Like very efficient, very efficient numbers. That concerns me. Like that genuinely very much concerns me. And it also concerns me that Ramondre Stevenson has had a really, really strong start to the season, that the run blocking for the Patriots has been there. And the Jets' run defense is not good. And they just lost one of their best run defenders in Jermaine Johnson. I think they're going to nickel and dime their way down the field against the Jets. And I think we're going to get some really, really annoying scoring drives from the Patriots. And I don't know. Maybe I should have a little bit more faith in the Jets offense at this stage. I probably should. I think the offensive line has held up very, very well through 2 weeks, as we were talking about earlier. So I should.
Rodgers has looked pretty okay too. So
Rodgers has looked like Rodgers when you give him a clean pocket, and they've mostly given him a clean pocket. The run blocking is still a work in progress, but it's not been bad. I don't know. I'm feeling like a Jets letdown on national television is going to happen. I think they're going to turn the ball over, and I think that's what's going to cost them this game. I'm going to say 20-14 Patriots win. I think the Patriots will get a couple of field goals because that's what this Jets defense tends to do. Patriots will have a couple of really, really annoying scoring drives, and maybe the Jets turn the ball over in Patriots territory. I don't know, maybe I'm just a jaded Jets fan from watching this team let down after let down for years on national television. That is just where my mind goes. I could just see it in my head, Mike. I could see it in my head. Aaron Rodgers, who's looked good and been very safe with the ball through the first 2 weeks of the season. He has not had a turnover. That's his fault through the first 2 weeks. I think that changes tomorrow, and if the Patriots take advantage of it, and I think they win because they win the turnover battle. That's going to be my prediction. And I hate that.
Maybe it's reverse psychology. Maybe you just feel this, but it'll be the complete opposite. You know,
I would love if the Jets just blew out the Patriots. I mean, that would be amazing. I mean, not for you. Sorry, Sarah. But
I'm like, would it?
Plus, they did up until the last game of last year, which didn't count for anybody. They didn't beat the Patriots for what, like 9 years?
15 games in a row that they've lost to the Patriots. And
the win was in overtime.
Yeah, the last
time go back to regulation, it was like 2010 or something like that.
They only had 2 wins over the Patriots since 2012, and both of them were in overtime. The last time they won in regulation of a regular season game was 2010. They played them twice a year.
I mean, your chances might be higher this year, right? Because
if there's any year they get them, if there's any game they win,
Bill Belichick is gone. Their best run defenders are out. So you guys have a two-headed monster in the making right now with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. So that could be your way in too. If they're not able to make up for the Bentley loss, the Barmore being gone, it could be a battle of the run game. And that could be the dictator.
I have confidence that the Jets offense can move the ball against Patriots defense. Weirdly, I'm more confident maybe in the offense going into this game than the defense. I'm only predicting the loss because I just think that the Jets are going to turn the ball over. Like I think they're due for one of those games. I think Rodgers is going to have a couple of mistakes, and then everyone is going to be like, "Oh my God, Rodgers, watch! That's it. The Jets suck," and maybe they'll be right. I don't know, but that's where my mind is going with this. It is definitely biased from being a jaded Jets fan over the years. I try to be as objective as possible with these predictions. It is so hard for me to do it with the Patriots. Like it's so hard for me to do it. But I think it's also based in logic. Like I genuinely do think that the defense is going to struggle with Jacoby Brissett more than we'd like, because he really just knows how to beat this defense. And I think Hunter Henry's gonna have another big game. Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson are gonna do well. I can see that happening. I don't know. That's sort of my mind.
How are you guys on picks so far?
With Jets fandom is like a lot of times, like before the Browns got nasty man Deshaun Watson, they were like these lovable losers. Like the Cubs were these lovable losers. It's like the Jets lose and nobody. It's like they make fun of them. It's like why we were harmless that entire time.
It's because two reasons. It's because they're New York, and New York can never be a lovable loser.
The Giants were bad the whole time too.
They were never lovable losers, and they also they've won Super Bowls. The Giants, like the Giants,
that should make it funnier that they're losing.
It's not, because the Jets are always be compared to the Giants, and they're inferior to the Giants in terms of history. And two, now they have Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers is a target of many people's, hatred. So they can't be lovable anything with Rodgers, and that's just how it is. But yeah, that's as far as picks. We're 2-0, right? We're 2-0, Mike, because we both picked last week one, we both picked week win 2.
So this will be the first split.
Be the first.
And I was more accurate last year. So
you were better than me last year. That's true. I hope you're right.
I hope I am too. Otherwise,
I hope you're wrong.
Game stream's going to be killer.
That's fair, Sarah. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he's right. Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go the opposite. I mean, I've accepted it anyway. If the Patriots lose, like I've already gotten into a mindset of like, it's fine if they lose. I can't let them ruin my life. You know what I mean? Like football.
We already have, so yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Football dictates my emotions far too much, and my life is miserable enough. I'm like, I don't need football to make it worse. So I'm like, I go into this being like, we lose, we suck, whatever, on to Cincinnati, like that's just how I am. So that's how I'm trying to go into tomorrow.
Preach to the choir. All right, thank you for joining us, Sarah Marshall. Tell us where you can, all these guys over on the Jet Press, tell us where they can find your work, Sarah.
Well, it's on musketfire.com, and then you can follow me on Twitter, because it's still Twitter, at smarshxo.
Yeah,
perfect.
If you want to see some wrestling tweets as well, Sarah's got you covered.
Yes.
Love that.
Yes, I know. CM Punk's love, because I'm a big CM Punk fan. I'm just kidding. I'm not. Always have to just mention CM Punk. That's just Jason's favorite thing to say, too.
Yeah, like, Jason appreciate that.
He likes to bother me about it, so... But anyway, yeah. So if you like wrestling, or if you can check out Musket Fire's YouTube channel too, because I'll be streaming there in less than an hour. So
you will.
Yes.
Thank you for tuning in, Sarah. Thank you for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, guys.
See you around.
Bye.
And as always, thank you for tuning into the Jet Press Podcast, where you can find us on YouTube, and we'll be live tomorrow night.
Yes.
Because we're either going to be really happy because we beat the Patriots, or I'm going to have a gun in my mouth. So that'll be really fun.
Jesus Christ.
You can check that out.
I think that's against YouTube's terms of service.
That might be against the TOS, yeah. But that'll be a fun way for this channel to go down.
Oh, my God. Fun. I don't know about fun. Jesus Christ.
You got to give people a tease, Justin, in this business to watch the next episode. So.
I don't think that's the way to do it.
Thank you guys for tuning in. And you can find us on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Justin, feel free to take us home.
We'll be back tomorrow night, talking some Jets. And if Mike makes it to next week, we will be streaming on Thursday next week. So we will not be streaming it Wednesday at 3 p.m. It'll actually be Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. We'll remind everyone tomorrow night as well, but I will not be around on Wednesday, so unfortunate. But we will be streaming Thursday at 12:30 next week, just as a little note to anyone who cares. Until tomorrow night, thank you all for joining us on the show today. You can follow Mike on Twitter at Mike Luciano. Follow me on Twitter at Justin T. Freed. Follow Jet Press at the Jet Press. Download the Jet Press podcast wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, hit that notification bell. You guys know what to do. We stream live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and live immediately following every single Jets game. Once again, thank you to Sara Marshall for joining us today, and thank you all for listening to the Jet Press podcast. I've been Justin Freed. That has been Mike Luciano. We'll see you guys next time.
See you guys tomorrow.